On August 17, 2021, Chinese President Xi Jinping launched the Common Prosperity Campaign to remake the world's second largest economy. Its main objective: to narrow the growing wealth gap between the rich and poor.
No one should be left behind, and no particular region or social stratus should be left behind out of the rapid economic development of China.
Among others, wealthy individuals, big tech companies, the education sector, and real estate developers were unsparingly targeted.
The government step in, they tax the rich, then distribute money to poor people. So basically try to address the issue of the poor people.
But the move to rein in private capital has left many investors nervous about the future growth of their business.
The ideology is very, very similar to Mao's ideology. It will actually scare a lot of talents as well.
How will the Common Prosperity Initiative change China's future? And with the current economic slowdown, will the campaign help bridge the gap between the rich and poor? Or will it cause further damage to its economy? Life has taken a turn for the better for Wang Muxi, Vice President and co-owner of the Oriental Symphony Orchestra. The 34-year-old second-generation entrepreneur took over the business from her mother, who started it back in 2003. That was when China was in the midst of its economic transformation, 25 years after it adopted the socialist market economy model under the leadership of its then paramount leader Deng Xiaoping. Muxi's mum was among those who seized upon the opportunity to set up her own business.
乐团从最早的初创团队2个人到现在的核心团队是大概65人左右的一个规模，是有经历了这样的，就是这20年间吧，算是经历了一个这样的一个发展。那么如果说艰难的话，先说上一代的发展最艰难的部分，肯定作为一个初创团队，从0到1的过程，它最难的一定是最开始的一个收支平衡，还有一个市场开拓的问题。那么我的母亲他们这一代已经把这个最艰难的应该说最艰难的步骤已经给度过去了。
Starting out business in China's post-reform era, however, was still quite a struggle back then for her mum. Because the orchestra was a private enterprise, no government funding or financial grants were available. Despite China's economic liberalization efforts, its per capita GDP in 2003 stood at around $1,000. It ranked 110 out of 195 countries, placing the nation squarely in low-ranking economies. Bread and butter issues were the urgent priorities, leaving little room for other pursuits, including the arts and culture.
环境上面来说，确实也是感觉到会这个20年，慢慢的很多政策会完善，包括也有很多像我之前提到的，有一些国家艺术基金，它也是也在那个时代，在2003年的时候，好像也还没有。
It was only in 2006, in China's 11th five-year national plan, that attention was shifted towards developing the nation's cultural industry. In 2009, funding for the arts began to grow with the setting up of a state investment trust fund. The arts budget amounted to about $7 million. But it grew to $70 million in 2013 with the launch of the first National Arts Fund. In 2019, Muxi successfully secured a $176,000 grant for a year.
还有就是像中国的话，有国家艺术基金，还有说 北京艺术基金这种，每个城市都会有这种地方的这种基金来帮助我们这种小型的乐团或者说是文艺团体吧，或者是艺术家，然后来有一个更好的一个生存环境。
The increasingly supportive landscape for the arts and culture may be attributed to Deng Xiaoping's radical makeover of China's economy. In 1978, Deng introduced a socialist market economy and opened up the country to the outside world. All of a sudden, the vast potential of China's economic engines roared to life. That decision altered the fortunes of the world's most populous nation dramatically and set the country on the road to riches.
In the early days, Deng Xiaoping had suggested that when China was opened up, they wanted to let some people get rich first, and the idea is some kind of trickling down process, in order to accelerate growth. So actually that worked.
During the years of China's market reforms between 1978 and 2005, its GDP rose 10 times. Average wages grew sixfold in the same time period. Deng Xiaoping's radical gamble of opening up China's economy and foreign investment worked. Its GDP per capita reached $10,000 last year. China has now entered an era of wealth and prosperity, and it's being felt across many sectors, including the arts, culture, and music.
可以从我自己的，包括我这个行业来回答这个问题。我认为，如果说是共同富裕这个词的话，对我们这个行业来说
But there was a price to be paid. With the newfound wealth came systemic corruption. In 2014, President Xi Jinping launched an ambitious anti-corruption campaign targeting every strata of society, famously arresting tigers and flies. Nobody was above the law.
The anti-corruption campaign is one of them, because it's not just excessive income, it is also illegal income that common prosperity should address. And of course, corruption is part of that.
40 years of China's economic miracle was celebrated with much fanfare that year in July 2021, on the 100th anniversary of the Communist Party of China. President Xi then declared that China had reached its target of being a moderately prosperous nation with a per capita GDP of $10,000. In February last year, he also proudly announced the country's success in eradicating poverty. Nearly 100 million people have been lifted out of poverty within a span of just 8 years.
After eliminating abject poverty as a phenomenon, China has enough financial resources and political commitment and support from the society at large to promote greater prosperity on a more equitable basis for everyone in China. No one will be left behind.
But the success of its economic reforms also increased income inequality within the society. Just last year, Forbes revealed that mainland China had 626 billionaires, the second highest number in the world, with a collective net worth of $2.5 trillion. And in 2020, the wealthiest 1% of Chinese held 30% of the country's wealth. In August 2021, a new initiative called the Common Prosperity Campaign was launched.
Common prosperity is aimed at achieving a more equal income distribution, more equal outcomes in society in Xi Jinping's new era.
Although President Xi Jinping brought up the concept of common prosperity in August last year, that thinking is not new. Common prosperity was first introduced by the nation's founding father, Mao Zedong.
The term has been around for decades. As a fact, Mao Zedong used it to launched the collectivization campaign and the Great Leap Forward.
At that time, China probably achieved the highest level of egalitarianism in human history. Everyone was equal, but it was equal poverty. Everyone was equally poor. There was no fun in that. So when Deng Xiaoping rose back to lead China, he advocated a very different growth path, which led to tremendous amount of transformation in China.
Under Deng's rule, the language of common prosperity fell out of use, but the concept was still very much embedded in the party leadership. Under President Xi Jinping, the ideology of common prosperity came out of hibernation.
China's leaders think that, okay, this is time for us to revise our strategy, because this is time for shared prosperity. Okay, so let more people get the fruits of that prosperity. Okay, so that is actually a consistent, okay, with the overall China's perspective.
Income inequality always is one of big concern, in addition to corruption. So that's the reason why Xi Jinping was fighting corruption at the very beginning. Then now Xi Jinping tried to tackle income inequality.
On the ground, the push for common prosperity has made people nervous, especially the business community.
所以我们现在还没有办法准确的预测说这样的一个政策，它最后会导致一个会演变成一个什么样的一个具体的结果。
So when Xi Jinping's slogan is common prosperity, then people naturally equal Xi Jinping's policy to Mao Zedong's policy, because of Mao Zedong's policy actually in reality make everybody poor.
There has been anxiety and apprehension that Xi Jinping's new campaign will revive Mao Zedong's ideology of egalitarianism, and that common prosperity may again lead to common poverty. Are these fears overstated? In a dramatic clash between public and private power, President Xi Jinping has unapologetically trained his eye on China's giant tech sector as well as on the class of billionaire tech CEOs. Under the umbrella of common prosperity, the Chinese president is determined to bring to heel the rich and the powerful. The key objective is to curb excessively high incomes and to encourage rich individuals, groups and companies to return more to society.
If you're talking about state capitalism, then the state is actually ensuring the profits will be earned, But profit is not the main thing, And even private companies have a duty to serve the people.
In the past few decades, China's technology sector has seen remarkable growth. The digital economy, including telecommunications, e-commerce, and software, just to name a few, is now worth 30% of China's GDP. Advancements by tech brands such as Huawei, Alibaba, and Tencent are driving the Chinese and global economy. The tech sector's breakneck growth, worth some $4.5 trillion in terms of GDP, however, has exposed market behaviors that have raised the eyebrows of the Chinese leadership. And that includes monopolistic practices and privacy data violations, activities which have the effect of squeezing out smaller players. Among the main casualties involved, internet conglomerates Tencent and Alibaba, food delivery app Meituan, and ride-hailing app Didi. Alibaba was fined $2.8 billion, while Meituan was slapped with $580 million fine for anti-competitive behavior. Didi, which is China's equivalent to Uber, the ride-sharing app, saw its plans to list on the New York Stock Exchange also go up in smoke when Chinese regulators cracked down on data privacy violations. But beyond bad market practices like monopoly or blocking access to new startups, which contributes to further income disparity, the crackdown on the tech sector was also done to rein in the growing power and influence of the tech leaders. Founder of Alibaba, Jack Ma, was once the poster boy for the rapid rise of China technology. But in October 24, 2020, he gave a now infamous speech criticizing the government's new financial regulations. He claimed that the move would stifle innovation. On November 3rd, the Shanghai Stock Exchange cancelled Jack Ma's Ant Group highly anticipated $37 billion IPO.
Of course, we will talk about global super giants. Then they control social media. They will have lots of influence. But in China, the system is totally different. All things is controlled by party. So party leadership make it very clear. If you challenge me, then you will lose everything.
According to The Economist's calculation, the tech crackdown wiped out more than $1 trillion off the Chinese stock market.
But that is something that Xi Jinping thinks that is something worthwhile. Even though the prices of these shares come down, it's something that we can accept. Because the socialist goals are more important, and that is the represents the welfare of the majority of the people.
China's class of billionaire tech leaders saw the writing on the wall. Soon after the Jack Ma incident, a handful of tech CEOs have since resigned, including those from TikTok, e-commerce giants like JD.com and Pinduoduo.
Common prosperity has always been a driving force in China. However, distribution system is not equal. I think redistribution, taxation, and the strict regulation so that the wealthy people will not be able to get away with tax avoidance or tax evasion, for example, that will be very, very important.
He is concerned about bringing more equality. There's a socialist, entirely socialist thinking. So China is not really a capitalistic society because making profit is not the first priority. And that is why, for example, in the case of Wuhan, this COVID outbreak, even private companies all over the country have to play a part in helping Wuhan at that time. Whether or not it's a state enterprise, you have got private enterprise, state enterprise, everybody is chipping in.
Qin Xiang is the owner and general manager of a 3D toy manufacturing company located in Guangzhou. He's among those who've responded positively to the government's call for private enterprises to do more for society. Over the past decade, the company has been supplying phone accessory parts to Motorola and Huawei. Today, it has transformed its manufacturing base to include 3D metal toys. Their global IP partners include Disney and Star Wars. From a startup with 50 employees, the company now hires some 800 people. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, the company has already reached out to the local government in Guangzhou to contribute products, donations, and even training for youths interested in innovative design.
对于就是企业社会责任的一个理解呢，我们并不认为它是一个单纯的就是一个单向的一个捐赠的一个东西。我们的产品的客单价呢，去到接近300块钱。他们呢，大学生的消费能力，你要他偶尔去买一个是可以的，经常买他有压力，所以我们在那个地方呢，就去建立一个就是工作室。那我们让这些大学生，他们有对这方面感兴趣的一些大学生，他们可以在课余的时间、业余的时间去到我们的工作室里面去拼装产品， 那同时呢，也可以把我们的产品呢带到宿舍，带到他家里面去自己拼，拼完以后呢，可以返还给我们。
During the pandemic, Qin Xiong's company donated many of their 3D toys to students as well as medics who were in quarantine, so that they can pass the time as they assemble the toys while keeping up their spirit during the lockdown.
However, all enterprising businessmen are well aware that while the Common Prosperity Campaign sounds good in theory, the devil's in the details. What exactly are the terms and regulations for companies to give back to society? Who decides and who arbitrates? At this point, it's not clear.
We're at a very early stage of this concept, but it's something that China needs to take care of. What is not so clear, and I think that adds to the uncertainty, is what really are going to be the policy instrument. Regulating that too much may have a risk. You may throw out the baby with the bathwater. And of course, it's a fact that in the adjustment, a lot of people lost a lot of money. A lot of foreign and domestic investors, they lost a lot of money because the stock prices of those companies that were regulated took a big hit. So there is a risk of excessive regulations, and with that, restricting innovation.
One of the more ambiguous directives of the Common Prosperity Campaign is about charity and donations.
When you actually go down to a different level of Chinese government, some local government are quite brutal. They will say, Jack Ma, please contribute 20% of your revenue to us. Otherwise, I will arrest you. So the problem is with implementation, not the slogan itself.
China's property sector has been one of the biggest sources of discontent. The big divide and the inequality drew a sharp rebuke from President Xi when he said, houses are for living in, not for speculation.
So many people have the apartments, they will become new rich. If they don't have apartments, then they are struggling. So now China become two worlds. So one is called have property. Another one is you have no property. So basically, two groups of people cannot actually speak to each other. The income inequality is so substantial because of, if we, for example, like you earn the same salary, but someone has a property in Shanghai, someone works in Shanghai, but they don't have property, then you are in trouble.
And so, mortgage interest rates were raised, capital to property developers was also restricted. The move, however, has led to a deeper credit crunch and pushed many developers into default. Among them, China Evergrande Group, the country's second-largest property developer. The debt-laden developer, which is reeling under $300 billion of total liabilities, was the first high-profile victim to have defaulted on critical interest repayments to international investors. But Victor Gao, former translator for China's late paramount leader Deng Xiaoping, is unapologetic about the policy to reduce the leverage of property giants in the country.
Real estate has been one of the major pillars of the Chinese economic development over the past 4 decades. Then, to become a property developer is probably a sure recipe for making a lot of money. And then, after you get rich, some of the property developers failed to pay attention to their social responsibility and failed to pay their due part of taxes, for example. So tax evasion or avoidance may be rampant in this particular sector.
President Xi is well aware of its potential contagion effect of such a crackdown on the entire financial system. The decision to pursue such a policy signifies the party's determination to prioritize social stability by adjusting the excessively high incomes of the country's super-rich. For 27-year-old Qi Jinping, a bright and well-educated youth, material goals of owning property and having a high-flying career do not interest her anymore. According to her, the inequality gap is already too insurmountable.
然后就跟着这个跑步机越跑越快，好像就整个人都被这个速度卷进去了，就是让我们有点无所适从了。
How will the common prosperity drive redistribute wealth and provide more equal opportunity and access to everybody? Will the campaign impact and motivate Gen Z youths? Or has it come too little, too late? They're young, restless, and hungry for change. Many don't even have problems switching between jobs just to try something new. 27-year-old Qi Jinping is one of them. She belongs to what's known as Gen Z, a new generation of young Chinese who are prepared to explore their abilities and expand their creativity and passion to the limits, instead of being stuck to their full-time jobs. They feel there's more to life than just work and are willing to change jobs more readily if it doesn't suit their lifestyle.
主要经历是在创作立体书还有绘本。我觉得我很难以一种特定的职业去形容吧，因为除了创作以外，创作其实也不是我就是职业的全部分。有时候我可能还会出现在比如说外国设计师他来中国做交流做访问的时候，我可能是以一个翻译的身份出现在现场。有的时候呢，我还会跟随一家餐厅的研发团队南下去猎寻食材。
A person like Qi, who's totally uninclined to a more stable and high-flying career, appears to run counter to the stereotype of the overworked Chinese youths who have been sucked into the grueling 996 culture. Meaning, working from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. for 6 days a week. Qi feels that many youths today are starting to rebel against such punishing work schedules. They now want their work to fit into their life instead of the other way around.
因为接触设计师比较多嘛，然后朋友之间也其实设计师很多，他们大部分都是在做自由职业，对，他可能会自己就拥有一个设计工作室，也可能他在上海的武康路，我有朋友在那边就开了一个独立书店。或者你说一个你就是上次那个。
A lot of youngsters feel that working so hard, to make a few bucks doesn't make too much sense, right? And the idea of so-called 996, is that you work from 9 to 9, so 12 hours a day for 6 days a week. That's far too much, right? And a lot of young people think that this is not meaningful.
During the Deng Xiaoping era of the 80s and 90s, China experienced explosive economic growth. This was made possible by allowing the people to break out of their self-imposed economic isolation to unleash their creative and entrepreneurial spirit under the slogan, "Let a few people get rich first." But 4 decades on, the policy has created a huge income and social inequality within the society. Today's Gen Z has found it harder to compete and reach their dreams of upward mobility and gain access to the wealth that their parents' generation once had. The competition for jobs now has also become more intense. The record number of university graduate unemployment is one telling factor. Last year, a record 9.1 million college students graduated in China. 10.8 million more are set to graduate this year, according to the Ministry of Education. But going by employment statistics, the demand by employers for college graduates declined by 11% in 2021 compared with the same period in 2020, while the number of job applicants rose by 38%. As a result, many graduates have taken up jobs which do not commensurate with their qualifications. Even for tech giant Meituan, which operates delivery services, has almost 3% of their delivery riders who are fresh grads. Of the overall 4 million riders that Meituan hires, some 25% of them are university graduates. With such bleak prospects, it's not surprising then that more Chinese youths today have become dispirited and less hopeful about their future.
我觉得可能是因为我们现在的社会发展的太快了，然后经济发展也比较快嘛，所以就好像是大家都在一个跑步机上，然后就跟着这个跑步机越跑越快，好像就整个人都被这个速度卷进去了，就是让我们有点无所适从了。然后像是买房啊这种遥遥无期的买房，还有生活成本的增加，可能都会给我们算是一个外在的压力吧。
This laid-back and disillusioned attitude called tamping or lying flat is precisely what's troubling Beijing, as it runs counter to Xi Jinping's ambitions of a great China rejuvenation.
The tamping actually in Chinese is some sort of very much like a negative term and not a positive term. It means that the life is so tough, so why not I just lie down?
People should have work-life balance, right? So that's something that the Chinese leadership is concerned about. And of course, they also don't want the young people to tamping. Okay, people should have ambition, should have an aim, should have some sense of purpose in life, right? So, and that is why Xi Jinping is addressing many different areas of excesses.
Under the umbrella of common prosperity, President Xi has set his sights to level the playing field for the next generation. In a bid to put an end to this lying flat or tamping phenomenon, the Common Prosperity Campaign has now tried to address the root of the problem, and it begins with education. It's been reported that on average, Chinese parents paid more than $43,000 a year for after-class lessons just to give their children a head start. But that means only the rich can afford such tuition fees. And therein lies the stark inequality. And so, the crackdown on the education sector was launched to address the gap.
One of the big burdens on the middle class is to educate their one child. A key reason why people do not take 2 or 3 children is that it's very expensive to raise a child in China, especially in urban China today. One part of that is education costs. Of course, education, primary, secondary, is free. However, a lot of the tutors cost a lot of money. The leadership has heard a lot of complaints about the expenses of education and tutoring specifically. So there was the $100 billion industry of online tutoring was wiped out overnight.
Interestingly, Xi, however, does not see anything negative about the stereotype of a generation as tamping.
就是躺平的状态不意味着你就不去努力了。躺平的话，我觉得它是给了我更多的时间，还有空间，让我去做我自己想做的事情。比如说，我有更多的时间去读书、看剧，然后扩展我的这种理论的边界，然后还有给我更多的时间去接触人，然后和不同的人去交流，以此来让我发现，就是我到底是想要成为什么样的人，就是给了我更多的自由的空间。
For her, The rejection of the rat race, the 996 culture, materialism and consumerism is part of a great rebalancing, which is in line with what the government is trying to do with common prosperity.
买房的压力也好，或者是生育的压力也好，它现在没有这种出口或者是反抗，它需要勇气。我觉得国家可能就是看到了我们的这些的困扰，它实施的这么一个共同富裕的政策，正好是给我们一个出口和喘息的空间，让我们去有这种勇气去做一些我们真正想要做的事情。
However, priorities of a very different kind are now weighing on China due to the resurgence of COVID-19 infections. As the rest of the world is slowly making a transition towards an endemic stage of living with the virus, China is still holding on to a zero COVID policy. Draconian lockdowns continue to restrict the country, and not even the first-tier cities are spared, from Shenzhen to Shanghai and now Beijing. Conservative calculations estimate that China's COVID-19 lockdowns are costing the economy some $45 billion a month minimally. With a sputtering economy, loss of jobs and incomes, a messy COVID resurgence, and a protracted Ukraine-Russia war that has blindsided the Chinese leaders, will common prosperity be forced to take a back seat in increasingly uncertain times? ...2021 was an exceptional year for President Xi Jinping. In February, he declared the end of absolute poverty in China. He hailed the lifting of 800 million people out of destitution as an unprecedented accomplishment and a remarkable miracle worthy of historic remembrance. In July the same year, Xi also proudly proclaimed that China had reached its target of becoming a moderately prosperous nation by doubling its per capita GDP to $10,000 from $5,000 in 2010. But that's just the beginning of the country's continuous battle to achieve what Xi calls the China Dream. He has now embarked on his next big campaign, the Common Prosperity Drive, to share the fruits of developments equally among the people.
China has claimed success in extreme poverty eradication, so there's no more extreme poverty. So because of that, it's time to have more people to share that prosperity, you know. Just eradicating extreme poverty is not enough.
But like all major campaigns, common prosperity is not without controversy. There's now a growing concern that Xi Jinping is taking China back to the days of Maoism. Mao was then obsessed with his dream of creating an egalitarian society. He purged landlords and business owners to eliminate any forms of capitalist practices. Will this latest move by Xi to close the yawning wealth gap in the country signify the same thing? Is it robbing the rich to pay the poor? And instead of common prosperity, will that result in common poverty instead?
Middle class and the new rich are really going against the slogan of common prosperity because they are common people. They work hard, they earn their money. So they become middle class by buying apartment. New rich, they are very creative. They are inventing different things. You can see, like including TikTok. Many of them are common people. Then when they get rich, then now you talk about common prosperity.
Supporters of common prosperity, however, believe it's not possible for the party to revert to the old days when poverty was rampant. especially given how far China has come today. It is important to differentiate the concepts of shared prosperity as espoused by Xi Jinping and Mao Zedong's idea of egalitarianism.
This doesn't mean that everyone in China will be equally wealthy or they will have equal access to everything. Why? Because philosophically speaking, it is not possible. People, as they are, have different qualifications, advantages. However, promoting common prosperity does not mean you need to stifle the outstanding achievements of different citizens in China, different companies in China, which aim at achieving greater technological innovation, breakthrough, creativity, entrepreneurship, for example.
For Wang Muxi, a second-generation entrepreneur, she believes the fruits of common prosperity is already evident in China. The arts is not traditionally considered part of the bread-and-butter industry, but she feels the philosophy of a shared prosperity has provided even the poor and marginalized equal access to the finer things in life.
然后通过惠民的形式，极低的票价、超低的票价，把它直接垂直的送到这个乡村的还有县市的观众面前。我觉得这个也是一个。因为像刚才我提到的国家艺术基金，它是支持我们在创作方面，从创作的角度来支持我们去走。其实这个也跟我们今天的主题，我觉得是有一点点关系，就是它也是一种，可以说是共同繁荣，然后这种文化的教育公平，然后资源公平的这样的一种行为，一种政策吧，应该可以说是。
For youths like Qi Xinyu, who's not so obsessed with the idea of financial and material success, she still sees the merits of common prosperity. To her, the policy will help people enjoy the material success together as the nation grows.
我们想要谈一些精神层面上的事情，讨论一些这种事情的话，那首先我就要保证我的富裕和温饱，就是我不需要为这种事情去操心。然后就是那现在这个大政策大方向是这个共同富裕的话，我就觉得还是挺好的，因为这样的话我可能就会有更多的机会。
But in redistribution, there will be a leveling process so that the differences will be leveled off and there will be no more people who keep worrying about having a sufficient amount of access to basic needs, especially in terms of education for the young, elderly care for the old, and sending people to the medical facilities.
But the recent resurgence of COVID-19 infections has now undermined the government's efforts to address the economic inequality and widening income gap in the country. It has led to a spate of lockdowns involving many major manufacturing and financial hubs, including Shenzhen, Shanghai, and Beijing. The protracted war in Ukraine has also caused serious disruptions to the global supply of food and fuel, driving up inflation to all-time highs. All these developments have now threatened to slow China's already sluggish economy. It now remains doubtful if China's projected GDP growth of 5.5% this year can be achieved. How will that impact the Common Prosperity campaign?
With the disruption to these supply chains, people may be unemployed. They may lose the jobs, and then new graduates may not be able to find jobs. So those are the challenges that Chinese leaders have to think about, right?
For now, it appears that the Common Prosperity campaign has taken a back seat during the current volatile environment. As the economy sputters, the risk is just far too big for the government to continue with this campaign.
The Chinese leaders were still hoping that China can have 5.5% growth this year, but it seems to be unlikely. It's still respectable growth. But if you have done something that is gone too much, it may not be 4%, could be 3%, 2%, and then it could be quite disastrous, for some people.
But does that mean that the campaign will be abandoned in view of the latest developments? Observers believe it is just a tactical retreat. But the ultimate goal of a common prosperity vision remains unchanged.
The end goal is clear. In terms of redistribution, it will be more equitable, fairer, aimed at making sure that everyone in China will not be left behind. No one will be left behind.